Okay, go ahead. Want to welcome you guys back for this session this afternoon. I really enjoy talking about these topics because they are so real to me, and they are becoming more and more real. I have been reading and studying the Bible since I was a kid. I grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist. This was in Cuba. And Seventh-day Adventists are really oddballs in Cuba. Right. Now, my father and my mother were both Catholic from a small town. It would have been something like Fort Myers or something like that would have been years ago. Fishing town, little bitty. People who did well usually were really skilled at what they did. My grandfather had a fleet of small boats that, yes, he would rent them out. I don't know how many they were. They were small boats. He would rent them out, but it was like a village. There was no running water. Some of you know what a thunder mug is. You know what a thunder mug is? You can Google thunder mug. But in the middle, if you did not have running water at home, okay, you had an outhouse. And that is hard to do at night if it's raining. Okay? So you had a thunder mug underneath the bed. A thunder mug.
In the early days, that's all they had too.
Yeah. And so when there was, but that was the kind of background. That's what I remember when I was a kid. There was no plumbing. There was a Catholic family. Devout. I mean, I think the most devout people are Catholic in many ways. And they believe in God, and they holding on to that for dear life.
And they believe in the Pope.
Well, that's where it gets squirrely, is that they see some things that is weird and strange. Now, my dad was one of those guys who just wasn't afraid to start investigating and find out what's up. Let's talk about this. Let's dig and look and find out what's going on. So he did. He came across the Bible, and that's when he chose to be baptized Seventh-day Adventist. He had a radio and TV repair shop. He was a graduate from Hemphill Technical School out of California. Now this was many years ago. My father graduated from Hemphill Technical School out of California in Cuba. He had to put a radio together to finish the course. So they sent you a kit and you had to build that radio. That was back in the days when you had picture tubes and all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, his partner, they had a TV repair shop with Castro shut down. Because you see, if you were in business, communism came in. Communism owns everything, and so they shut down a lot of businesses. They just said, we're going to take inventory as to what you got, put a government seal on your door. That means you can't go in there unless you're authority, and your business is gone. Many people in Cuba blew their brains out, literally. They were set for life. They had a business, everything was good, and once this happened, they just couldn't handle it. Some people, and what people don't understand is that banks, the way they operate, okay, if you've got $1 million, that's great. But if there's a problem in the system and you need some money, okay, today we can do $50. Okay, and next Friday we can. That's right. We're not telling you that we've lost your $1 million, but today we can do $50. You come back next week, and we give you another. You get another $50. So many well-to-do people in Cuba they read between the lines, which means your $1 million just went to $50 a week. And I'm just using some round numbers, okay? But if I say, hey, if you deposit $1 million in my bank, and I say they're guaranteed, I'm not telling you there's no time attached to that. You might have to look and see. I'm just saying this is the way I understand it. There's no time attached to that, which means, your money is there. We guarantee your money. It's just not telling you when it's not like you can show up and get it all now. Oh, you want it now? You want it all now?
We don't have it now.
We don't have it right now. You're going to have to come back. And so, yeah. And so this has happened in society time and time again. America is a blessed and privileged nation.
For now.
Well, America has done so much good in the world. Remember, if you read Revelation 12, it tells you there that the earth helped the woman. How has the world been evangelized? How has the world heard about the truth about Jesus Christ and some of the other truths? It hasn't been with Russian money. It hasn't been with Chinese money. Where did it come from? The great U.S. of A. Free, home of the, right? Home of the free and the brave. Free and the brave. Those two go side by side. If you don't have the guts, don't get deep into something because, you might get hurt. Something might happen. This is the reality of life today. This is what happened to Jesus Christ. If you believe in Jesus Christ, you understand that Jesus took on the powers of the day. And the rest is history. And Jesus said that the same thing can occur to you if you believe in Him and if you dare to look into some of the realities. My dad was a Seventh-day Adventist. My mom was Catholic. Uh-huh. And so that was a wild ride for 13 years. What's that?
I was brought up Catholic. When I became a Seventh-day Adventist, my wife looked at me. She had a lot to say.
Yeah. Yep. And so I mentioned to you guys before, my mom, the day my dad decided, he read the Bible, parts of the Bible, and he's like, okay, whoever teaches this is who I'm going with. And so his partner said Seventh-day Adventist. And my dad said, listen, you study with Jehovah's Witnesses, and you thought that they had the truth. And now you're telling me some other people have the truth. I don't know about that.
You ever read The Keys of His Blood?
Parts of it. I haven't read the whole thing.
Jesuit.
Jesuit, yeah, Malachi Martin.
And he said in there, if you want to do anything like the Sabbath, you got to go to the Seventh-day Adventist church.
Yeah. And so if you look enough, you will come to the truth. God will guide you. The Holy Spirit transcends anything that's human, and God will guide you to the truth. And so, country living, prophecy, understanding what's happening in the world, what's happening to the cities, this is all coming like a funnel right down to boom. Because they are things that have been talked about for many, many years with Seventh-day Adventists and some other groups, but mainly Seventh-day Adventists with an understanding of the prophecies that truly connect through the Bible. You need to use the Bible as the interpreter. Has really piqued my interest. And so I keep an eye on the events that are happening, having just a little understanding of how some of these governments work, the great organizations of men that have built up lots of money and guns and ammo for the last days. Right now Europe is in the middle of guns and ammo, right? What do you got? How much you got? What can you do? What do you want? I mean, these are all things that we're seeing in the news as you have these nations that are angry, but they truly symbolize the men that make them as a nation. They truly symbolize that. And so the Bible says, woe unto you who have heaped up riches for the last days. And so as we consider country living and how we can prepare for living in a very, very difficult time, we want to make sure that we have our priorities straight. And so I've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, this is spiritual. Things are going spiritual. And so we must have a spiritual preparation, and you need to have spiritual wealth and value. And that is not money. It's not houses. It's not tractors and lands. It's not crops. It's not gold. It's none of these things. It's much more valuable than that. And it's really not hard to get if you're willing to let go of the other stuff. That's where the catch is. So many people want the land, the gold, the tractors, the trucks, the everything, that they're almost willing to do anything to hang on to that. And this is what happens as we move towards the end of time. What happens is those that are in control of the wealth and the stuff, including land, homes, and everything else, they basically said, or going to say, you want your cookie? You better eat your supper first. And so, unless you're willing to play with the program, of course, it ends in Revelation 13 where it talks about, this is where it ends up for the world. Revelation 13 talks about you can't buy or sell unless you have the mark of the beast. And this is how you get to keep your stuff. Well, yeah, Sunday worship is intricately tied to that. Notice that this portion of Scripture is not for somebody who's fumbling through the Bible and happens to come to it, and they're just going to read it and get it. No. It tells you right in the text. You need to make sure you read it correctly. It tells you right in the text, here is wisdom. So it's giving you a warning that this is not easy to calculate and figure out. And so these are huge spiritual things that, as you understand the Bible and know the truth, you can come to a knowledge of what's going to affect you at the time of the end, having to do with buying and selling, country living, and everything else. It's all funneling in to having the right idea and the right concept. Now, I will say the Bible in the book of Daniel and in the book of Revelation, Daniel's an apocalyptic book, which means it's a book that reveals what is hidden. Daniel's apocalyptic. Matthew 24 is apocalyptic. And so is the book of Revelation called Revelation, and that's what apocalypse means, right? Mind you that they warn us of someone so big, so powerful, that they have invested in misleading you even before you were born. Daniel 7:25 talks about a power who will change times and laws before you were born. And that's because we are up against principalities and powers of darkness. And so here's the thing. When you understand, what's that?
God has overcome them.
Yes. Yes, we are called to overcome, and so it's not the things of the earth, it's the things that are up above that. Now, here's how you know when you're on the right track. Right? If you understand calculus, okay, do you have a problem adding and subtracting? No. I don't think so. And it's the same thing in this concept. If you understand spiritual things, okay, and this is one of the ways you can check and see how you're advancing and understand. It helps you to understand many other things because it's higher than material things. And so spiritual things are above material things. And this is where we have an issue. Coming to the end, you have to really, really, really determine if you're going to go spiritual or not. If you're going to go spiritual, you're going to have to check everything else out. Mind you, Jesus Christ said, occupy till I come. Look it up. Jesus said, occupy till I come, which means he knew that you were made The world was made, the material things were made for man to enjoy and to have. But things are twisted and messed up. And so now at the end, Satan pushes people to commit the unpardonable sin. All right? And I say that because if you receive the mark of the beast, that's it. The Bible says you're lost. And which means that you've rejected the Holy Spirit to the great point. And this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to scale up as we move towards the latter days. And the reason I touch on this before I get into other country stuff is because it is very important for us to understand that the spiritual is the most important. It transcends anything else. Let's talk about, I wanted to bring up one more thing just in passing because I know we've brought it up today a couple of times. Technology, okay? Cell phones. Okay, if you're way out in the country, usually your cell phone doesn't work very well. And that's because it needs a cell tower. If you've got something that works directly with a satellite, it works better. Internet, how connected are we with the internet, right? Business, it's done. It is so fast with computers on the internet, access, communications on the internet. Mind you, that this continues to get more and more and more and more wrapped up. It is continuing to move. People say things about, is it 5G? That I don't know. Some people say, oh, 5G this, 5G that. Well, as far as what the actual, some people claim that it's making people sick and that it's doing this and that. That doesn't make sense to me. Okay? And it's simply because it's set up as a network for communication. And yes, it's not natural. If you buy almost any radio that transmits, usually they say it's not good to have it real close to you because of what it emits out. And so I would say the same thing about 5G or any equipment that transmits stuff or is receiving stuff. If you have it on you, yeah, there's probably something going on that's not good for your cells, possibly, and stuff like that. But many people really aren't that worried about it because they know they're not living eternally anyway. And so I'm not saying that 5G is, has some kind of weird stuff. I mean, I've heard so many things that it's just crazy. And some people, they know something's up. They know something's up. They can't put their finger on it. They don't trust it. And so some of them, I think, chase a lot of rabbits, meaning they just kind of go off into things. You need to be able to show it to me. I mean, for me to really to believe in something or demonstrate it to me, reasonably, logically. I don't have a degree in some of these things, but I have worked with electronics and mechanical, hydraulic stuff all my life. And it needs to make sense to me in some way. I have another cell phone. I turned it on this morning. Came on, it was charged. I couldn't get my messages. I said, this phone, we no longer support 3G. Okay, that happened this morning. This phone is 4G. My other phone is 3G. I don't use it a lot, but I check it every once in a while. And it said, we don't support this anymore. Technology has a slippery slope. For those of you who really don't care to get that crazy, complicated with computers and phones and stuff, I can agree with you because when the smartphones was pretty much what everything was going to, I looked at it and there was a camera on it. I'm like, I don't want a camera. I just want a phone. They said, well, if you want a good phone, you're going to have to get one with a camera. Okay. So I got one with a camera. That was years ago. Is a camera handy? Absolutely. In ways I wasn't even ever thinking about. There are things, you don't need to carry a magnifying glass anymore. Even if your vision's good, even if you got good vision, if you got a good phone, you can take a picture of something and zoom in on it, and you're going to be able to see stuff that you weren't seeing before. So this thing is an unbelievable tool. Unbelievable tool. The technology has just gone through the roof. But it has that slippery slope that it kind of pulls you in. Problem with memory, I was talking earlier and it came up. Yeah, they want you to buy more and more. And for you to spend more money so that other companies can use it. You own it, but they use it. So you've got a computer, it's got a bunch of memory in it, gigs and all that, right? When you go online, they're putting their stuff in your computer to make their program faster, which makes them money in the long run, but it's your space that they're using, your memory in your computer that you have paid for. And so I did not like that because the memory in my laptop was going down, and I was trying to get more space, and I was losing the race. Totally losing the race to get more space. I had to end up reformatting my drive and starting all over again. And now I check it. I still check it every once in a while, and you can lose a gig over a week pretty easily. And I'm like, what? And that's when I realized, yeah, they're just using your memory. But the technologies, you guys are very familiar with that kind of thing. They are absolutely running away and going crazy. There's big plans. As you can see, there's a lot of money in it, and so people are very, very involved. Okay, the one item that we're going to talk about, and we have a video on, is food. Food. How much of your life revolves around food? Right? If you see a wild animal, he's usually thinking about food. They're usually looking for food too. If it's a raccoon or whatever it is, they're out usually looking for food, something to eat. And so this is a big area of country living. We have been told that you should get a place that has space to grow food, acreage, right? Acreage. Does anybody here currently grow food that they eat? You have to get your hands dirty. Yep.
I have a Asian peach tree, and that's probably the only thing I eat.
That's probably it.
But I keep planting more, because it is protein.
Yeah. Okay. So there's just a handful of us here who might grow something to eat. Okay, you guys that just came in, do any of you grow anything that you eat? Do you grow any food? Mangoes. You grow mangoes? Mangoes, yeah. All right. And so, because the topic that we're discussing is food. So, okay, let's just take a quick little survey here. If you had to grow food to survive on, okay, what would be your go-to crop? Okay, beans over here. Anybody else? Go-to crop, yes. Wheat. Potatoes, sweet potatoes. Yucca. There's in the South, there's a saying, I took a diesel class, and that was a lot of fun. We had an engine, there was a diesel engine in this technical school that needed a gas engine to get started. So you fired up a gas engine and then had a big old clutch. And once you had that gas engine warmed up good, revved up good, then you pull back on this lever and then and put this clutch in and got the diesel engine going. And anyway, this diesel teacher was from Tennessee. And he had these funny sayings, you know, he had these country sayings. And one of them was, root hog or die, he would say. And that is because hogs root in the ground, yucca, sweet potato. These are roots. They're roots. And these animals know certain trees, right, certain bushes, the roots are good to eat. And so root hog or die is a time of famine. It was root hog or die, he would say. And it means it's a hard time. There was hardly nothing to eat, so you had to eat roots. And a lot of times that's how some of these things have been found out. People were just hard up and they started, you know, finding out things that were good to eat. Food. All right. So the video we have is just 9 minutes and is going to talk about a crop. Now, the counsel that we have from the Spirit of Prophecy says if a house is small as long as land is connected with it, because the problem of buying and selling will be a difficult one. Something along that line, okay? And you need to look it up. It makes sense. This is something the Spirit of Prophecy has said. Seventh Adventists they've heard about this. The little book Country Living is a nice little book. You can get that. I would just want to say, remember that the quotes on there, it's a compilation. So what it means is that they're not all, it wasn't written by the author just that way. There are excerpts taken from different books and different articles, magazines, and things like that from that author, Ellen White, and was put together. Excellent little book, but just keep in mind that some of it is different dates, okay? But she mentions on there, and we've looked at the quote before, and so this is just in quick review, that land is good, okay?
Also, if
Yes.
they lock you up like they did us, you have land to walk around in. They can tell you, in your property, you've got to stay, but if you have
Okay.
land outside, you can walk
You can,
around.
yep. And that is pretty, actually is very, very significant. It's something that you don't think about till it actually happens. What she's mentioning is that, for instance, when there's a lockdown, you can stay in your property. And so if you have a piece of property that has a few acres and you've got a trail through it, you know what? When you can't go anywhere and there's people, you can't talk to anybody, when it gets kind of crazy. Yeah. But if you go for a walk in the woods or through some bushes or, you know, it's helpful. And so that's what she's talking about, is that it has that added quality and benefit, which I just took for granted. But in fact, yesterday, I enjoyed that, yes.
Something which we may have to take a look at is the changing of the money. All of a sudden,
Okay.
crypto
A currency change.
came out of nowhere, and it has no value. It has whatever value somebody
Right.
decides, and if they decide to have a universal money, they have it already set. They can just say, okay, we're gonna go to crypto, all the countries in the world are gonna back it, and this is gonna be set by, you know,
Yeah. The world seems to be moving closer and closer to that all the time.
but it just.
Is Bitcoin a crypto,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
the Bitcoin, it just
Okay.
exploded all of a sudden, out of nothing, and nobody knows who it is that's supporting.
Well, you know, it has to, it has taken a hit. Yeah. Well, you know, this is what happens, right? They say gold has gone up. Anytime somebody's ready to start a big old war and there might be big trouble, a lot of things broken, a lot of people getting killed, you know, things change in value. things change in value. And so this is just kind of part of the world that we live in, you know. And so this is a reason why when it comes down to food, being able to grow your own food has many, many advantages, okay? One of them is that you know what you've got. You know what it is. If you've got good soil, if it's not in the soil, it's not in the food. So the water you add or comes down from heaven, the sunshine comes obviously from the sun, and that powers the plant, but the plant needs nutrients that are in the soil. Otherwise, it doesn't really get in your plant. And so if you can get like good soil, you can have food that has a lot of nutritional value, which means that you'll be healthier just by eating that food. This also means that, for instance, you might see food in the store that looks really good, but sometimes it doesn't have much of a taste, or sometimes it's weird, and usually it's because of that. It doesn't have the things in it that it's supposed to have, but somehow it still kind of grew anyway, right? And so the quality of the food is better when you can grow your own food. Is it easy to grow? Some of you have tried growing stuff. Is it easy to grow your own food?
Not when it freezes.
Not when it freezes. Okay, yes.
The animals will get it.
The animals will get it.
They will definitely.
Okay, and so these are the big things that people have to learn, right? If I hear, oh, well, the cities are going to be a problem. Seventh-day Adventists know even a little more detail. Hotbeds of violence. Hotbeds of violence.
New York City went up, I think, 40% in crime.
40% in crime. New York City. You know, and we've seen the talk and the battle, you know. There are issues that come up. You know, these past few weeks, there's been a lot in the news about the truckers, right? Canada. 18-wheelers, those big rigs. If you get a bunch of people with big rigs, they can shut down your town overnight. They say, no, you're not coming through here. Hey, well, I got to go to work, man. Nope, not today. Take the day off because we're not moving the rigs. They're staying right there. You're going to have to start towing them one by one. This is the reality of what we live in. And let me tell you, if you read the Spirit of Prophecy, Ellen White, little lady, lived a long time ago, but when she's saying stuff that's coming true right before your own eyes over 100 years ago, if you've got one eye and half sense, you better read what else she says. Okay? But she's seen the towers come down. If you read that portion in the testimonies, and then also if you've seen the portion on, there's also a portion on there about Nashville. Okay? And so these are very, very real things that are going to take place that make city life very difficult and can basically stop the normal cycle of things. If you're living in an apartment and they do lockdowns and there's these issues, all of a sudden you can just find yourself in a different world. Seemingly like overnight. And so now what am I going to do? You know, I don't like life like this. But what options do you have? You might have very little options. And so the growing food is a bigger deal than it first seems like. You're going to have seeds, you're going to have plants, you're going to put them in the ground, but this sister's telling me there's animals that come after it. There's other diseases that can come on it. You can have freezing temperatures. And so it involves a bit of knowing and a bit of doing to be able to do it. Okay? It's hard work. Our sister here says, do you have to get your hands dirty? She knows. It is hard work. It is hard work. That ends up being good for you anyway. That ends up being good for you anyway. And so this is where we must accept certain things. And living in the country, did anybody here grow up in a farm? Oh my goodness. I've got 2.5 guys. One went like this, which means he was on and off the farm. Oh, We got 3. Woohoo! We got 3.5 that grew up in a farm. And you know, if you didn't do the work, if somebody in your family didn't do the work, what was going to happen? It wasn't going to be there for you. It was not going to be there for you. Somebody had to take care of the chickens. Somebody had to take care of the garden. Somebody had to take care of the crops, right? And those are two different. You can have a garden. You can have crops. Okay, some things need a lot of space to grow in. And so these are two different things. It's hard to do it just with a garden. Usually you want a crop that you can really, and so it's a lot of work. So as soon as before sunup, things were cranking and going. Oh, what's the story in the house? Oh, we got to get breakfast done, and the sun isn't even up yet. Oh, the sun is coming. And as soon as the sun comes up, boom, we're going to work. We got this to do, we got that to do. And then if something breaks, oh, now we got to fix it and try to do it at the same time. And then if they say something like, oh, they expect the next freeze to be in 2 days, and you just lost today because your tractor wasn't running. Now, all the work that you've done might go to nothing. You see, these are the kind of real pressures that are on a farm. And so it's different than living in a city, but this is what has to do with getting that food in. And so people who sometimes think of, oh, I'm leaving the city, I'm going to the country, yay! They start out very happy. But when they get to the country and they find out how much hard work it is to the country, and then they say, I am so tired of working all day long, man, I want to go to Pizza Hut. And they say, what? Pizza Hut? That's 2 hours away. We can't go to no Pizza Hut tonight. Oh, man. You're going to have to make your own pizza. It's better anyway, but it's going to take a lot of work. And so what ends up happening is that, farm ends up, now you see why they had a lot of kids back then. The kids everybody would be put to work. And they hired people. You hired hands. And this is how a farm ran, because there was so much work that was involved. If you didn't take care of things, left a tool out, it got rusted, now it's locked up and it won't work, and it won't, whoop, there you go. And so you see, you have to be more self-sufficient, and it's less forgiving. And so it makes more humble, hardworking, intelligent people. The farms do, okay? Because of their simple nature of trying to make food. So we're going to go ahead and watch this video. What would you grow if you had to feed yourself? Okay, how much land would you need? These are all good questions. All right.
Potatoes are one of the very best things that you could grow if you're looking to get enough nutrition and calories for your family. And the number one reason is that potatoes are one of the highest yielding of all cultivated crops. Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead. So speaking of the yield of the common potato, on the average farm in the United States, using conventional methods, they will get about 15 million calories per acre. When you compare that, it's about the same as what you would get from an acre of corn. You've heard corn is king, and it may have been historically for money people could make and various reasons, but it's also very high yielding, and so are potatoes. What's fascinating when you compare them head to head, that you can't simply live off of corn. I did a video on if you just lived off of corn, you would get 4 terrible diseases over time, and one of them is dermatitis, diarrhea, dementia, and then ultimately death if you just ate corn. So you don't want to do that. And so check out my video on corn in the past. But potatoes, on the other hand, people have lived almost exclusively off of potatoes. Let's get back to the yield for a moment. So talking about the yield, the average farm, as I said, may get 15 million calories per acre. Some farms will end up getting 20, and others, the very highest that's ever been recorded, amazingly enough, was actually in India. Some farmers in India were able to get over 34 million calories per acre. This was done not on conventional farming, this was done on organic farming intensive methods. And so what this means is if you can get your soil just right, you may be able to get higher yield on a organic farm, potentially, than even on a standard conventional farm. The average person might eat somewhere around 1 million calories a year in the United States. They really probably don't need that many, but they do. So you're talking, you could feed potentially 20 people off of 1 acre. So you're gonna have to find out how it works on your own property. But I'm not suggesting that you only eat potatoes, by no means, but what happens when people eat just potatoes? And Andrew Taylor was overweight and he wanted to change his lifestyle, and he had heard that one of the best foods that you could eat are potatoes, strangely enough, and so he decided to try it, and he ended up losing like 117 pounds in a year. All he ate was potatoes. Well, I should clarify. He ate sweet potatoes, and sweet potatoes and potatoes are simply not the same at all, but he was just sticking to potatoes, and since sweet potatoes were called potatoes, he stuck with that too. But he ends up losing like 117 pounds in a year. His blood sugar, what happens to it? You think, oh, there's all kinds of carbs in there. His blood sugar must have shot through the roof. His blood sugar went down. His cholesterol went down. His blood pressure went down. He did use some condiments like, I don't know, maybe, barbecue sauce or something like that, but very little, and it actually enhanced his health. So there's people out there like Penn Jillette, you may have heard of him, that he did the same thing. He started off, he didn't do it as long as this Andrew Taylor did, but Penn Jillette, he ended up starting off with just a potato diet to kick off his weight loss. Some people are doing these 21-day potato only. I'm not suggesting that you need to do that, but looking back in history, we look at the old Irish potato famine, and they say that they were eating upwards of 90 to 90+% of their diet was potato. And that's why they ended up dying, like over 1 million people died when they had the potato blight. And because they were really only growing one particular kind of potato, the particular potato that they were growing, I think they were called lumpers, they didn't have the resistance to the blight, so when they were hit, it just killed like half of their crop. And since almost all their food was from potatoes, people just literally starved to death. And so obviously that's tragic. Now I'm growing 5 different varieties. Growing a variety of them can be great, because if perchance some kind of blight, some kind of disease, something happens and kills off one of your varieties, it won't make a difference. The other great thing about potatoes is, like for instance, if you're growing brassicas like broccoli, kale, these kind of things, and you're growing them next to each other, and you keep them till the next year, and you end up they're pollinating at the same time. They have flowers at the same time. They're going to cross-pollinate because they're in the same species, and whatever seeds you save are going to be corrupted, and you'll have some maybe Frankenstein food as a result. But potatoes, you don't have to worry about it because they're not pollinated by the wind. You're actually growing from the tuber itself, and so this won't be a problem. You can grow as many different varieties of potatoes as you want, and it's not going to make a difference. They're not going to cross-pollinate. You can grow them right next to each other. It really won't make a difference. So potatoes are helpful on so many different levels, but one of the other great things about potatoes is that they store really, really well. You can put them in a cold storage area of your house, like in a basement or in a root cellar. I happen to have a root cellar, but some of them I didn't even get out of the ground last year, and I live in zone 5, so it gets pretty cold, except for it just didn't get that cold last year. It was just a warmer winter. But I left some of them in the ground, wondered would they be totally dead, and you know what? I came back in the spring and they looked fantastic. Actually, they looked good right now. I was just digging some up and I replanted some of them. So that may be, depending if you're in an area that's too cold, it might kill them off in the ground. But it made me think, hey, if it's normally like this, if the Yukon Gold specifically that I was using, I could maybe just leave some in the ground and pull those up the next spring if you're too busy in the fall, and replant those in another area, because you don't want to plant in the same place over and over year after year. You'll end up getting more bug pressure or other disease problems if you're planting in the same spot over and over. But once again, they store well in the house all year, so you can keep them until the next year. They don't take a lot of preparation in the winter. You just literally get them out of the ground, clean them up a bit, and put them down in the root cellar or put them down in the basement, and they can last months on end. So this is just really fantastic. But you might be one of the people who say, yeah, but aren't they high glycemic? Maybe they spike my blood sugar. Well, they can actually do that when they're standardly cooked or boiled or baked, but it turns out research has actually shown that if you bake it, let it cool down, and heat it again, it actually significantly lowers the glycemic index, meaning your blood sugar doesn't spike as much. So if you're one of those people who need that, you can just cook it twice and that'll help you out. Being that potatoes can grow in such cool regions of the world, I mean, they can grow way up north, even in regions that can't even handle wheat, you can grow potatoes, and they can grow way up in Alaska, you know, northern Russia, these kind of places. They can become a real staple for people who live up in the mountains. This is a fantastic food to grow. In general, you'll probably want to plant them somewhere a couple weeks before your last frost. So even when you're expecting to have some more frost, you can be planting them, because remember, you're covering them up in the ground and they're going to slowly be growing up out of the earth, and it's not going to hurt them to have a bit of frost here and there. And then they're going to be, as they start growing up out of the soil, remember that you're going to be piling it up. It's called hilling it up around them, and you're literally going to get a hill of soil around them, and the plant will continue to grow up, and you might want to leave a little of it outside of the hill, maybe an inch or two above where you're hilling up, and you can do that for a while until you get, I don't know, maybe a foot above the ground. Some might even go a little bit more than that, but that will help those tubers to be growing there under the earth. Somebody might be afraid that, oh, you can't eat potatoes, they're full of starch, and starch makes you fat. Just the opposite. Actually, research has been done on potatoes, and what they found is that potatoes cause the most satiety of anything that they have actually tested. What does that mean? That means the most filling food there is potatoes. Now you might think, what? I can eat French fries all day. We're not talking about French fries. Yes, French fries are made out of potatoes, but they're not potatoes. They're deep fried food. But when you're actually eating a boiled potato or baked potato, they're so crazy filling. There's nothing as filling as a potato. That's what research has actually shown. Potatoes have less than 350 calories per pound. The reason why people think potatoes are fattening, because they think of things like French fries, they think of things like potato chips, and are those things fattening? Yeah, ridiculously so. Do you know how many calories there are in a pound of potato chips? 2,400. And yet there's less than 350 in a pound of potatoes. So they are a great weight loss food, yet you can get a ton of calories per acre out of them. So these are just one of the best things that you could possibly grow. By the way, do you have a favorite variety or any other suggestions that might be helpful to either myself or somebody else watching this video? Please share those comments down.
Has anyone here grown potatoes?
We have one, and then you haven't said, basically the roots will go out and they will create.
Others.
And then there's a green thing on the top. Yes, and when that green stalk dies, that's when you cut it.
Okay.
And then you eat the green still or no? No. Okay, just checking, trying to.
Okay, so these are all good things. Did you learn something from that? Wasn't this guy is very he's very well informed, very well educated on some of these items, because you can see that he's done his homework. And so I had heard that potato was one of the favorite crops, and it's one of the big takeaways for us today. I had heard that was one of the favorite crops, but I hadn't really heard the numbers and seen how it is truly a crop that can really be helpful. Of course, one of the things that's going to be good to go along with someone who would think, hey, you know what? I like potatoes. That might be a real option for me. Something else to know is, what are you going to do with them? Right? You might get tired of but you can take the potatoes and you can probably do different kinds of foods with them. I know one of my favorites, if you get a good mashed potato going, I mean, man, I can eat a plate and a half of mashed potatoes. And so sometimes it's a matter of getting the right type of seasoning in there, which brings me to the next step. Okay? Last year, we went off to Montana. While in Montana, I was in Bozeman, in a really nice area. And we're visiting a friend there, and he knows that we're vegetarian. So She's laughing because she knows what I'm about to say. So he's a really nice guy, super nice guy. We really enjoy being with him, and he's not a Seventh-day Adventist, but he says, he says, I've been in Bozeman a long time. He says, when you guys come to Bozeman, come look me up. He says, we'll go places, and he's a civil engineer. And so he's into all kinds of things that are, really good. Quiet guy. He doesn't talk a lot. He's not like me. He's quiet. So he says, if things get really wacko, he says, you're going to need to eat meat. He says, you're going to need to eat meat, because he's thinking, people hunt. I mean, this is what Bozeman, this is huge out there. Huge. We went to this other place, and this guy says, you see that over there in the corner of that mountain over there? He's pointing in the distance, but to get there is probably going to take you half a day. He says, over there, there's always elk. So he says, if you go over there, you'll be able to get at least a couple of elk cows. And that's what these people do, is that they hunt.
And then they make cheese out of
Do they? And so, when it comes to food and living off what you're going to plant, okay, many people automatically are thinking, and another reason for guns and ammo, some people think, is hunting. We're going to hunt, and we're going to get that. I want to remind you that we have a lot of information, okay? When you have a lot of information, it's either going to be evident that you're going in the wrong direction, or it's going to help you to go in the right direction. We have information concerning the animals, okay? And the information that we have is that the animals are going to increase in disease and sickness. Where did this pandemic come from? What are they saying they're finding on the wild deer? COVID-19. Okay, and so 50% of the deer in Michigan is? Yeah, 50% of the deer in Michigan, supposedly. And so, but the idea, the concept is very simple. Animals don't understand like people understand. They don't take care of things like people take care of things, and so they can't, they're inferior to us, and so they can end up with problems that we might mitigate or deal with. They don't do that. And unfortunately, the pollution that is out there is it's in the water, it's in the soil, it's everywhere, okay? Remember that animals are also reservoirs, they're reservoirs of carcinogens. So when an animal gets exposed to carcinogens, it goes into the animal and it stays in the animal. And so this is why animals are high risk. Please understand, animals are high risk. Someone might eat animal all their life and never get cancer. Somebody might just come across the wrong animal, boom, you get cancer, okay? And it's because it's like playing Russian roulette. If you get an animal that for some reason was in an area where they ate stuff, if something's messed up enough, sometimes animals won't even eat it. But water and other things that are contaminated, if it goes in the animal, it stays in the animal. So if it keeps coming in, you end up with concentrated carcinogens in creatures and in yourself. Okay? So this is why eating plant-based gives you less carcinogens and more antioxidants. And so automatically by going plant-based, you get two advantages: less carcinogens and more antioxidants. Two different worlds, but it's shifting you away from cancer big time. This is why there's less cancer amongst vegetarians. Usually, it doesn't mean that there isn't any cancer, there's less cancer. This is just a known fact across different cultures. What is the key? Growing the food and being able to make tasty meals out of it. And so it takes more work and knowing and understanding. If some of the universities we have now, and I mentioned this to Michael earlier, there's things that are hard to do. And sometimes a university just takes on a task of, there's been something that has been impossible to do because of X. Okay, they identify one particular problem. A university and research can take that on and try to find out ways around it and so forth and so on. Food, if I am convinced that if someone worked at it, if different people, multiple people work at it, you can have better tasting food than the fat, whether it's animal, cheese, different types of things that we use that are they taste good and they're easy. There are ways in nature, because there are so many natural things. They just need to be put together right. And you can have absolutely great tasting food. I mean, really good tasting food. That is very good for you. Yeah.
Have rosemary, thyme growing, basil plants.
You can have different kinds of things. And this is where a garden and a field comes in handy. And it's because you can use things that you can learn to put together. You can also get recipes. There are people out there. I have eaten vegan food that have been put together professionally from a chef who has gone to school and has worked, whether it was Europe or wherever it was. It was at the Ritz over here in Naples. It's big bucks. But this is where quite often there's a bit of, more information, knowledge, and whatnot. They were putting some vegan dishes together that were better than the meat dishes, better tasting than the meat dishes. And so, you can learn to find ways and recipes to make foods different ways. And so potato is one that has been worked quite a bit. You know what? Every once in a while, I'll take a baked potato and I'll eat a good baked potato by itself. And you know what? It's got a really good taste to it. If you get a good potato, I'm like, it doesn't even need salt. Obviously, it would get tiring if you had to eat that every day. But if that's all that you had to survive on, hey, it's food, So, any questions or comments about what we discussed so far? Question, comments, yes?
I was just gonna say, sometimes people get sweet potatoes, or you can buy an organic potato and put it in the ground as well.
Okay, so you can get seeds.
So sweet potatoes are specifically made to be put in the ground.
So you can buy those.
You can buy those from a seed company, or you can just go get an organic potato, sweet potato, sweet potato is different. But you can get any organic potato put in the ground as well.
Okay, so an organic potato you can put in the ground.
Oh, beet.
When do you put them in?
You would have to probably put it in fall for us.
They won't grow in the summer here.
No, but sweet potatoes grow in the summer here.
Oh, yeah?
And yucca.
And yucca.
So sweet potato and yucca grows in the summer here. What zone are we in?
You're in zone 10A.
10A. Okay.
That's where they
That guy was in zone 5.
Yeah, that's different.
So he's, where is he? He said at one time. Is it Tennessee that they're in? So anyway, these are all things that you need to know, that you can get informed in. If you're thinking about moving to the country or even helping in the country, because the reality starts coming in as you look, and it has happened in the past, right? Some of these country places, people grow different things, and they share and they exchange the crops. Because see, if you're growing potatoes and you're working potatoes, it's easier to plant, like say if you're going to plant, say 10 potatoes, it's easier to plant 10 more than to set up and try to plant corn. But someone who's doing corn is already set up, they can plant 10 more corn. It's easier for them to get set up to do potatoes. And so what ends up happening is that this guy grows a lot of potatoes, this guy grows a lot of corn, and they switch.
There's a lot of farm cooperatives
Yeah,
around there.
co-ops. Yep. And so this ends up happening not just in, say, organized co-ops, but people who come to grips with it. Somebody says, man, I really like doing corn. Okay, you know what? I don't like doing corn. How about if you do some extra and we'll swap? And they can talk about these things, you know. Somebody likes doing potatoes. Yeah.
Also, like sweet potatoes, the young leaves are edible, but you can actually put them in a stir fry.
Okay, sweet potato, young leaves are edible.
Big ones,
Not the big ones, but,
young shoots.
okay, young shoots, yeah. So this is, you know, there's a lot of really good information, and there's more coming. There's more information that's developing all the time, and it's easier to share because of the internet and whatnot. So you can get a lot of information quick. You can get a lot of information quick. And so if you make yourself wise unto the subject matter, it's not just necessarily that you might be growing corn or potatoes, but you might be able to help somebody who's doing it by what you know, or just by your ability. You might like and are good at doing a certain type of work or certain skill. And so this is what ends up happening in country living, is people really, really share and help a lot. I don't know if I told you, and I'm going to close with this story. There was a customer of mine who, in fact, I think he grows corn. And so he said this, and I had a few questions for him because I really like corn. And I had a few questions for him, and he's telling me, oh yeah, you know, country living is a totally different lifestyle, blah, 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 blah. And then he says, one day I broke down on the side of the road coming out. And I needed to find parts to fix my car. So I went to the neighbors and he wasn't there. So I just took his truck. You know, somebody would be calling the cops, you know. But he says, that's not a problem. He says, that's not a problem, where he was. And it's because it's a different mindset. You don't want to go just jumping in your neighbor's truck. But you know what? If you have a problem that you can't take care of, you know your neighbor well enough, right? It's like taking your brother's truck, because you know that you need it and he wouldn't have a problem with it. What's crazy is that, and I'm thinking, where were the keys? But you know, people that come from the country, they leave the keys in the truck. They don't have like, oh, where's my keys? Oh, I can't find my keys. They leave the keys in the truck. You know, and it's because, you know, that's how it was with the tractor. That's how it was with the mower. That's how it was with everything. You leave it in there. No. Yeah. Right. Right. And so they dealt with it a little different. If there's somebody going around stealing stuff, that's what needs to be dealt with. Not everybody changing their lifestyle to fit the lifestyle of the criminal. But we live in a world where that's just the way things are. If you get close enough to the city, you're going to have to pull the keys out of your truck. Okay? Somebody's going to take that truck and they ain't bringing it back. And so, but I'm just saying, this is just some of the realities that are out there. And it's because, you know, farmer knows how hard life is. And they sympathize with one another and they're willing to help one another. And that's a whole lot better feeling and working with than people worrying about their neighbor stealing their stuff. I remember we went to, one time we went out of town, came back, and somebody has stolen our ornamental plants. We couldn't believe it. It was ornamental. They stole them. We're like, this was in town, Fort Myers. Many years ago. T-tops, I had a Corvette at the time. One day I woke up, my T-tops were gone. It's like, whoa. And I think they busted the window, didn't they? I think they did. They busted the window and got my T-tops. And so, yeah, in town, they will steal stuff.
And that was a little bitty town.
And that wasn't a big, that was half of probably what it is now. But anyway, yes.
My parents' car was stolen in Queens. I used to tell them, lock the car. It was by a supermarket. They came out with the grocery bags. No car. It was gone. So I said to my father, did you lock the car? No.
He didn't lock it.
No, he
Yeah.
didn't lock it.
But see what it is it's a habit. If you're in the habit of leaving the keys in there, you're not even thinking about it. You just leave them in there. If you're in a habit of not locking the car, it's just a habit. And this is what really makes...
Depends on how you look at things. I used to park my car in the city, and I would leave the doors open, because I knew somebody's going to be coming around checking anyway, and there's nothing in there that I really cared about, so...
Oh, you didn't want them busting the windows out.
They didn't break the window.
Oh, there's nothing in this one. They just keep going. Yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah, it's a whole different set of skills from up there. Yes.
There was something that I saw on comics with George said, I guess that a lot of people left in the cars somewhere. Anyways, everybody in the parking lot just left all their trunks open. They just left it open. What is that? But they're just like, if they want to look, they can look. You know, there's nothing here. And so they just left it open, like George said.
They didn't want it broken into. Yeah. Yeah, it's just ongoing. And there are those who make their living that way. Unfortunately, it's through this kind of crime. So, yeah, city living is very different in many ways. All right, let us close with a word of prayer, unless, I don't know, didn't want to overlook anyone. All right, let us have a word of prayer. Our God in heaven, thank you so much for your great love for us. Thank you, O Lord, for the information that is out there, the truth as it surfaces, as it comes forward. Help us to trust and know that you know the way. And we pray that you will continue to guide us. We pray that you will give us a blessed rest of the Sabbath and guide us through this coming week. Help us to have the courage to follow you and to know that you have our back. Things will work out. Give us the courage to follow your law of love, for I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.